They say healthcare saves lives. But tonight, it was a reason a child might die. Not because the doctor failed. Not because the medicine didn't exist. But because permission had not been granted yet. A silent system. No face. No mercy. No urgency. And in that frozen moment of helplessness, Chris made a decision that would rewrite his entire life. Chris had always assumed that when someone was dying, doctors acted first, and paperwork came later. That night shattered that belief forever. The doctor didn't move. The nurse kept looking at a screen. A mother kept whispering, please. Time kept running. But treatment did not begin. Not because the cure didn't exist, but because a system somewhere had not said yes. Chris watched a life hang in the balance, not because of medical limits, but because of administrative permission. Something snapped inside him. This wasn't healthcare. This was delay as a business model. And the people delaying were untouchable. In that moment of rage, Chris understood something brutal. The ones who control permission control survival. And he silently made a promise. He would find who owned that power and take it from them. Chris went home that night, but his mind didn't. He didn't see a medical emergency. He saw a business model. So he started digging. And the deeper he went, the darker it became. He found out hospitals don't decide freely. Insurance companies do. Approvals aren't delayed by accident. They're delayed because delay is profitable. Every hour of treatment is held back. Data is checked. Risk is calculated. Cost is measured. Not to protect life, but to protect financial exposure. And here was the brutal truth. Suffering wasn't a failure of the system. It was part of its design. That's when Chris realized this wasn't healthcare. This was commerce disguised as care. And those who understood how money moved behind the pain held the real power. For the first time, his anger had direction. He wouldn't fight doctors. He wouldn't fight hospitals. He would go after the system, making money from being slow. Chris didn't go public. He went quiet. He knew noise attracts defense, but silence attracts truth. So he reached out to someone on the inside, a senior figure, a man he respected, someone who had spent 20 years inside the insurance system. The man agreed to speak. Just once, off the record, private, and what he said wasn't advice. It was a warning. He told Chris, "You're not fighting healthcare. You're fighting a financial infrastructure. People don't understand. Approvals are not a medical decision. They're a liquidity decision." Chris was frozen. He tried to ask more, but the man stopped him. Voice low, almost afraid. "Walk away, before they notice you noticing." And just like that, he ended the call. The next day, his number was offline. Email unreachable. LinkedIn gone, as if he never existed. Someone got to him, and Chris finally understood he wasn't investigating a system. He had already entered its territory. Chris stopped blaming people. He started studying the machine. He traced every denial pattern, every delay, every approval that came too late. And he saw something terrifying. It wasn't humans choosing who gets treated. It was algorithms, outdated, built on past data, blind to present reality, optimized for one job: protect money before protecting life. These models weren't smart. They were old, primitive, predicting risk based on history, but ignoring actual need in real time. And yet, they had final authority. More power than doctors. More power than hospitals. Because once the algorithm said, high risk, the system stalled. Every time. Chris didn't just feel anger anymore. He felt clarity. This wasn't a medical fight. This was a data war. And the ones winning weren't curing people. They were predicting what might cost them money and blocking it early. For the first time, Chris wasn't just angry at the system. He saw exactly where to strike it. Chris realized something simple and dangerous. You don't beat a system like this by asking it to change. You beat it by building something it cannot defend against. So he made a decision. He wouldn't build a hospital. He wouldn't build another app that begged for approval. He would build something the system couldn't see coming. A shadow AI, not trained on corporate-approved data, but on real human cases. Cases that the insurance algorithms had ignored, delayed, or destroyed. He started collecting real-world signals, patterns the old system was blind to, things that weren't in the official datasets. He wasn't building a tool. He was building a weapon, a prediction engine that spoke the language of risk better than the legacy model itself. But instead of protecting money, it predicted the true cost of delay. For the first time, Chris wasn't studying the system. He was designing its replacement. The call came just after midnight. A small clinic, an infant with severe infection. They had one shot left of the right antibiotic. The insurance portal showed denial pending. The clinic begged. The doctor pleaded. Chris listened. He felt the old rage and something colder. He pushed a button. He routed the drug. He bypassed the approval system. He paid for the dose himself, through a hidden channel his shadow AI had prepared. The infant's fever broke within hours. The mother screamed and then sobbed in relief. The doctor cried in the hallway. Word began to move, quietly at first. Another clinic called, then another. Whispers turned into texts, then into small, careful meetings. Business lesson. Proof moves markets. One clear win is worth more than 1,000 arguments. When people see life saved, they no longer ask only about rules. They ask, how did you do it? Chris knew the cost. Every unauthorized route left a trace. Every saved life tightened the net around him. He was buying credibility with risk. He was trading legal safety for real-world proof. Business lesson. Credibility is a currency, but it costs. You must be ready to pay. In reputation, money, and risk, the network began to form. Small clinics who trusted him shared data. Real cases, messy notes, outcomes, dates, delays. This was the feed his shadow AI needed. The model learned patterns that no corporate dataset would show. But the system noticed anomalies. A hospital flagged an unusual supply request. An insurer saw a cluster of claims routed offline. Threats arrived in thin envelopes. A lawyer's letter. Then a cold phone call from an unknown number. Business lesson. Early traction attracts predators. Growth without a defense is a beacon. You must plan for attack as you plan for adoption. Chris sat in the dark and listened to the calls. He tasted victory and the metallic tang of coming war. He had saved a life, but he had also declared himself a target. He smiled once, then he got to work, because saving one life changed everything. And now the system would not let him be small. The first attack didn't come with sirens. It came with silence. A clinic suddenly canceled their call. Another stopped replying. Then an email short and cold. We've been advised not to continue communication. Please do not contact us again. Legal letters followed, not from one entity, from many, each written differently, but carrying the same message beneath the surface. Stop or we ruin you. Hospitals were contacted, not directly, but quietly warned. Do not associate with Chris. His work is under investigation. Investors pulled out, funding frozen. Partnerships vanished overnight. Nobody asked if what he did was right, only if it was safe. Business lesson. Your greatest enemy is not opposition. It is fear-based withdrawal. Most people don't fight systems. They bow to them. Chris didn't panic. He expected this. He watched carefully, not what they attacked, but how they attacked. They didn't try to disprove him. They tried to erase him. He wasn't being debated. He was being deleted. That was when Chris understood. He was no longer a researcher. He was an active threat. And from this point forward, there was no going back. Not to safety, not to negotiation, only forward to escalation. They shut the doors publicly. But quietly more began to open. Not from the top, from the bottom, not from power, from desperation. Small clinics with no corporate backing. Doctors tired of apologizing for delays they didn't cause. Patients who lost someone, not to illness, but to paperwork. They didn't come loudly. They came silently. Encrypted calls. Anonymous drop points. Carefully traced approval logs. One by one, they started sending real data. Private case histories. Delay outcomes. Treatment patterns insurers never saw or never cared to. Business lesson. Systems built on fear fall to those who have nothing left to fear. As the data flowed in, Chris's shadow AI evolved, not on simulated models, not on sanitized statistics, on raw human truth. Then something happened that even Chris did not expect. His AI predicted an illness before the insurers did, a silent pattern in blood work, a risk the legacy system would never flag until it was too late. The doctor confirmed it. Shocked, a patient was treated before symptoms began, not reactive care, preventive power. The system was built to respond. Chris had built something that anticipated. Business lesson. In any industry, whoever sees the future first controls the present. The network wasn't big, but it was alive, and now, quietly spreading. The system could ignore one clinic. It could threaten 2. It could blacklist 10, but it could not ignore public proof. The first patient spoke out online, not with anger, but with gratitude, not accusing the system, but thanking Chris for intervening before the system did. Then another story surfaced. Then another, not loud, but undeniable. Patients didn't mention AI. They mentioned hope. They didn't say disruption. They said someone finally acted before it was too late. Regulators, watching quietly from the shadows, hesitated. Media, once silent, began to ask questions, not to attack Chris, but to ask why the system hadn't done what he did. Business lesson: the most dangerous threat is not a competitor. It is a question the market cannot answer. Suddenly, the big players felt heat, not financial heat, political heat. Saying no to Chris was no longer just risk management. It was public image damage. Boardroom panic began quietly, not at startups, at giants. And for the first time, the system wasn't hunting Chris. It was defending itself. Chris never tried to destroy the insurance system. He did something far more dangerous. He made it obsolete. His AI was no longer a rebellion tool. It was a proof of survival engine. Clinics trusted it. Patients believed it. The public defended it. And the moment the narrative flipped, the system had only 2 choices left: silence him and risk national outrage, or adopt him and survive. They chose survival. It didn't happen with press conferences. It happened in quiet signatures, undisclosed integrations, sudden pilot programs, silent adoption disguised as innovation. Chris didn't become a doctor. He didn't start a hospital. He became the new gatekeeper of permission. For the first time, treatment could begin before bureaucracy. Predictions replaced delays. Prevention replaced reaction. And this time, the system adapted to him, not the other way around. Business lesson: real power isn't in fighting the system. It's in forcing the system to move through you. The war wasn't loud. It was invisible. And Chris didn't win by shouting. He won by rewiring the infrastructure of decision itself.